And hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. And I'm here again with Reverend Rick Cempie. It's nice to see you, Rick.
So good to be
Welcome.
here.
Thanks for being here. Thank you for being here. So I've seen you've made quite the circuit. You were on with Terry Renner
hmm
on her show, wonderful show. And then I think you were on for quite a while with Sherry, Voices from the Swamp.
Yeah, that was a heck of a run. It was very enjoyable. We
Uh-huh.
got into a lot of fun stuff.
Oh, that's really good. That's
Yeah,
awesome. I love that. Yeah.
yeah.
So today we decided to come together, and it just so happens to be a perfect day for the both of us to be here with all of you, as it is in 17 of our states, Indigenous Peoples Day. And I'm guessing the other people are celebrating Columbus Day. I don't know. Is that still a holiday in some states?
It
I
would
don't know.
be.
Yeah. 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 No, it doesn't make much sense. Anyway,
Yeah,
we're going to celebrate Indigenous Persons Day and with great
yeah.
joy, and discuss some astrology, a little bit of astrology, discuss a little bit of the rise of the divine feminine, which all of us are experiencing, and I've got some diversity topics to also talk about too. So
So
welcome,
this should
welcome.
be exciting.
It'd be fun. So if you have any comments or questions, make sure you do post them in the chat, and we'll try to get to you. So I want to say hi to JR and Wiki and Shades of Gray and Seascape and Denise. Welcome and thanks for being here. We're still only a few minutes into the show, but it's wonderful to have you right here with us. So thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm
Uh-huh.
excited to see how this rolls. I've been enjoying the whole shift into the holiday season for
Uh-huh.
earth-based spiritual people as well, which you do
True.
have an overlap with the indigenous being those who respect the earth.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
this has been
Correct.
very
It
enjoyable.
is. It is beautiful to see. I remember hearkening back to the early 1990s when I was involved in learning some Native American spirituality with a group of people that I was
hmm
working with. It was the same time that Dances with Wolves came out, which ended up being one of my very favorite shows because it showed the indigenous people in a more true element. I mean, I recognize, it's not always
Hollywood,
perfect. Yeah, it's Hollywoodized, yeah, but it really made me so happy because they even used the Lakota,
right?
dialect in order to talk, so, yeah, I was very
Yeah.
happy about that when that happened. Yeah, yeah. So, hello, Emmy J, it's nice to see you as well. Thank you for being here. So, I wanna start by first of all, by saying Happy Indigenous Peoples' Day and Happy Canadian Thanksgiving to everybody that
Oh,
might be
okay,
here from
great.
Canada. Yeah, they celebrate, about 5 weeks before we do, and they kinda get things prepped and ready for us, so, yes, they have their Thanksgiving in October, and, we have so many Canadians that are here as subscribers that I always like to include their holidays just as much, so thank you for being here, everybody.
In
So,
light of you doing
let's
that, I will
yeah,
say that the native people there are recognized as First Nations
yes, yes.
for
More so
anybody
than
who isn't
anything we do
familiar.
here. Yeah, I get and there's a whole tribal, beautiful pride, but they work together, and I was just reading that some of our Native American, groups are joining together for certain activities more so than they ever had, and so they're celebrating their own diversity, which is beautiful. Yeah,
Very
beautiful.
important that they do what they can because so much has been lost with
Uh-huh.
the colonization and to strip them away from their customs, their languages, their traditions, and their very identity. You know,
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
we can talk about that more as we go forward.
Sure. Rick and I, we're talking about the whitewashing of history, and we're seeing it in real time once again, like we've already seen it so many times. but I remember when I was in grad school reading about the Trail of Tears and certain other things that I had no knowledge of when I was in high school. Nobody ever talked about it. It was always they were the bad guys, ridiculous. And so, just learning about the Trail of Tears and how the natives were pushed out of their lands and given blankets that it contained what was it, measles or something, German measles, I don't remember.
Smallpox.
Could be smallpox. They were, they weren't washed after the person before them had passed, and they got it because they had no immunity to it. So, yeah,
Right.
things like that. Yeah, really lousy stuff going down on the Native Americans, and we continue to see that. I was watching a show the other day about Gabby Petito, the little girl that was in Florida that was missing a couple of years ago, and everybody was surrounded to try to get her home and so forth. But in the meantime, there were 25 Native American young ladies who were also missing, but nobody said a word about them. And that has happened in any minority. It's happened with African American, it's happened with Hispanic or Latino folks, and it's got to change. It's just got to change. It's very sad. Yeah.
And there's so much difficulty.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I was thinking with accessing legal resources to go ahead and have their people protected. There's such issues over who's on what land, who's going to have authority.
Correct.
Get, and the U.S. kind of takes a hands-off approach because they are given autonomy to police their space. But then what happens when, if it's just a U.S. crime in general, when you cross federal state lines, it's considered a federal issue.
Correct.
So why aren't they protected there under that regard?
Under that regard. Yeah, it is interesting how they discern what they're going to do and what they're not going to do to help the Native American tribes. And of course, only within maybe the last 15 years or so, they finally, they do have this casinos and so on, that benefit the different tribes and the different members of the tribe. But, that took forever and a day. That was very long in coming. And so, yeah. Yep. Here you go. Louise says there's so many Native Americans missing in Utah. We never hear a thing unless you go to the res. Yeah. Oh, I believe that, Louise. I do. Although there are pictures sometimes that are
amongst. This is part of the institutionalized white supremacy that is inculcated into our culture, and because we don't hear about it, we think nothing is happening.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
We're taught to believe that.
We are taught to believe that. I thought that had gone away because I thought that in the 90s they were starting to move more towards, equality, diversity, really taking a look at things that are have always been there, but nobody took a look at. But I can see there's still a long way to go. Long.
Yeah, I mean, you had the American Indian movement that was more well known in the 70s, but I think it may have even had its start in the late 60s. But how many people have even heard of it now?
Right.
Late. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. I was thinking of when we were younger, and they had the Native American man in a canoe, and he's canoeing down the in the river, and there's all this trash, and he's got a tear coming down his face.
Right.
And I'm not sure if it was him or if it was just in general, but a lot of times Italian men played Native Americans because their skin was a little bit dark. And that was the representation. Yeah.
Ricardo Montalban was treated that way, remember?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes. Uh-huh.
Rita Moreno talks about how she always had the parts offered to her for exotic characters, and
Yes. Yes.
they
Uh-huh.
would change her skin tone willy-nilly to go ahead and
Mm-hmm.
meet their stereotype, essentially.
Sure.
That's what it was all
Sure.
about. It was a stereotype.
It was. It definitely. Well, when Ed Ames played Mingo, didn't he? Wasn't that the name? His I can't remember. I think his name was Mingo, and he was a Native American. But Ed Ames was never a Native American during the Lone Ranger.
Okay.
So, or is it
Wow.
Tonto? I'm thinking of. I'm thinking maybe it's
Tonto.
Tonto.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it was
Yeah,
Lone Ranger.
yeah, yeah.
I thought that was something like James Silverheels or something.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure, but that rings a bell. That name.
Well, Silverheels would have been indigenous, definitely. But wasn't it? There was Ed Ames went on. Maybe he was on. Maybe he was on Daniel Boone. Now I don't remember. You may be right.
I think you're right now because Daniel Boone and Mingo sound familiar when I put them together.
Yeah, that's where he was Mingo. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, it's the aging thing, you know.
We're always hitting it somewhere. Yeah, Wiki agrees.
Thank you, Wiki. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mingo and Daniel Boone. I knew that name was somewhere. Okay. So the poverty is so sad to see on the res and the polluting of native lands. Yeah. I just saw today that there on the Navajo land, I believe in New Mexico, they don't have clean water. And so they need
this was a huge issue during COVID.
Okay.
Because everyone was called to go ahead and be incredibly diligent with hand washing.
Correct. Okay.
They didn't have water. Their sources of potable water were limited.
Right. Right. Well, they still are, apparently.
Right.
Yeah.
And they weren't offering to go ahead and ship in hand sanitizer.
Right.
That wasn't an option.
Right. Yeah. That's true. That's true, Rick. Yeah.
But
you don't hear about it unless you follow it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I get irritated about the way Puerto Rico is cast adrift in Caribbean incidents.
Right.
But all year round, we have the native reservations that are dismissed.
Ignored. Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about that with, whose reaction. This is the worst. This is the worst hurricane problem in the history. And I'm thinking, no. Puerto Rico, 2017, paper towels and 181 days without power. That's a problem. Yeah. So yes, there's other places that because they are not white.
Sure.
Didn't get the help that they needed. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the infrastructure that they complain about on the mainland is certainly still an issue on Puerto Rico.
It definitely is. Yeah. Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was in Puerto Rico, I think about a month before the hurricane. I was in San Juan, and we were on a ship. We were docked in San Juan, and what a beautiful place, and then to think that all those people very much didn't have what they needed for all that time in that. Oh my God, how do people do that? I don't understand, and being even who was it, the gal that represents Puerto Rico, she's wonderful, but her vote doesn't count, interestingly enough. That's another thing that I don't understand. She
much of a real representative,
Right. Yep. And she is very good at what she does, but Oh, okay, Maureen. Toxic waste went into the Grand Canyon from the mining operations and devastated the drinkable water sources. Okay.
You know what? Mining
Wow.
is an historic issue that goes back and has its roots in, I think it is 1459, with the doctrine of, oh, maybe somebody can help me out if my memory doesn't pull it to mind real fast. Doctrine of, I have it written down somewhere. Manifest destiny.
Oh, manifest destiny. Okay. Yep. That makes
I
sense.
think that might
Uh-huh.
be it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was no, the doctrine of discovery.
Discovery. Okay.
Yeah, the doctrine of discovery. So the
Mm-hmm.
Pope at the time, this is 1459,
Mm-hmm.
gets this brilliant idea that if European monarchs send people to conquer foreign lands, discover places,
Uh-huh.
under the guise of bringing them to the church, it is their divine
Oh.
right. It is their
Uh-huh.
This is what gives them the right to discover them.
Oh, I
And
see. Okay.
yeah, and it went on
Wow.
from there, and that's why you had such a heavy Hispanic and Portuguese, and I think a small French contingency in South
Mm-hmm.
America, which is
Mm-hmm.
this is where it relates to the Uranian
Okay.
research that
Yeah.
I did.
Tell us about that. Yeah.
I have been very excited about asteroids, and at one point it dawned on me, wait a minute, we have the discovery chart for Uranus itself, the
Mm-hmm.
planet.
Yep.
And that is the Great Awakener. I wanted to go ahead and dive into that,
Yep.
and I looked at historical revolutionary issues. And the same time, we used the whole decade of the 1780s, and it may have included into the 90s because as it comes up, those things are really unfolding. It's a big impact with the outer planets moving slowly. That's not unusual. And
Mm-hmm.
at the time of my original recognition of these things, the first search showed me a very Western Eurocentric search.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it showed me the US and France. Something told me later to double check and try something different. So I
Yeah.
looked for women
Mm-hmm.
involved in revolution. And I found at that time, I've not been able to locate it again, but about 5 different female revolutionary indigenous people throughout all of South
Mm-hmm.
America. Though some
Amazing.
helped
Yeah.
Simon Bolivar, some helped Martin.
Uh-huh.
There were different.
Okay.
There was an indigenous leader, I think, maybe in Peru. If not, it may have been Venezuela, he had his Spanish name, but he was
Right.
also indigenously known as Tupac, before Tupac was anywhere around.
Yeah,
And
right. Yeah. Oh,
and his wife is credited with giving a lot of the help. And she was also had papers, lineage,
mm-hmm.
documented that showed that she was a mixed race, not just
Mm-hmm.
mixed between the Hispanic and the indigenous, but black,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because we'd already seen the beginning of the Atlantic slave trade, and
Sure.
that is
Sure.
easily overlooked. Looking at You find amazing things out when you just go ahead and look up things like that. What are the
No kidding. Yeah.
look up
Yeah.
achievements of, and then throw a
Uh-huh.
marginalized group in and see what you discover. It's incredible. I was just looking for a few things, and I found one page list sharing things that indigenous people were inventions, like the Inuits responsible for snow
Hmm.
goggles with skiing.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Uh-huh.
in South America, getting the latex from one tree, and another compound from the morning glory, and they blended it together, and they got rubber that they
Oh,
could make
cool.
bouncing
Yeah,
balls with. So I'm sure
sure.
that had a lot to do with, that probably played some part in the Aztec medicine ball or whatever that ball was in the large quartz they had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, they found syringes that they had created. They would
Wow.
use a bladder and a needle, and it
Hmm.
was used for medication.
Sure. Sure.
So
Wow. Wow.
they
Yeah.
were,
Just amazing accomplishments. Yeah. Yeah.
but you know,
Uh-huh.
anyone who is vilified gets disregarded in history.
I know. I
Um,
well, even as
you
far
see the
back
same
as
thing in the Middle East experiences it too, because
thank you, that's what I was gonna say. It's Muhammad's wife, Hadifa, I think her name was. She was older than him, and she took care of Muhammad, and she had was a woman who had her own business, and she ends up marrying Muhammad while he's up getting the tablets, in the Muslim religion.
Mhm.
You don't hear about her. You don't hear
Right,
all the things she did for him. Not at all. So I
there
get
are
it.
incredible mathematicians out of
Uh-huh.
Persia and different parts of the Arabic
Yes.
world.
Mhm.
Um, there, in South America, as I was mentioning, there were many wealthy women along the
Yep.
Andes who were
Wow.
basically
Yeah.
very powerful in their cultures. And when the Europeans colonizers came, their gender identification wiped out the women's power,
Mm.
even
Oh,
though they had
wow.
been
Okay.
previously more powerful than the men in some spaces, monetarily,
Yes. Right. Right.
independently
Mhm.
wealthy. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it,
Uh, I
it's
I had
incredible.
read I had read a fabulous book many years ago called The Alphabet versus the Goddess, and how women were in charge for the longest time until he says, until the advent of writing, and men were able to pick that up faster, and then they became more and more the leaders. But in the indigenous cultures, most of the grandmothers or the women are the ones that would
Right.
decide if they go out and fight or whatever it is that they do. So they've always had that beautiful divine feminine as part of how they live. And I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there was also a stronger equality of sharing things that you would
Yes.
find.
Yes.
And, I
That's right.
find it interesting here on the Indigenous People Day that because of my sister's fondness for Native American spirituality, on her birthday, the first year she had passed, I had sent a call out to people on ZADS to come join me here in PA because they
Mhm.
were having the first international intertribal
Mhm. Yep.
buffalo me- messengers powwow for the white buffalo,
Right.
and it was an incredibly lovely experience.
Yep.
And it was so much the way to experience it. And one of my dear friends, another spiritual Zad's friend, had a terrifying fear of lightning because she's been she's had more than one and near death experience, three of them by lightning.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
there was
Wow.
a horrific storm on the one evening where she and I were in about a 20 by 20 canopy underneath there with elders. And the two of us
Mhm.
are in one corner talking to a few elders, but she is absolutely terrified. And we heard uh, a disembodied voice from between us
Uh,
in the group that
uh-huh.
we were together
Yeah.
with speak
Wow.
and say something to us. And it was like,
Uh-huh.
hey, did you hear that? It wasn't any of you guys, but it was right
Yeah.
here.
Oh, that's so cool.
And,
Yeah.
and yeah, I heard it.
Uh-huh.
One elders
Uh-huh.
eating one right after the others, confirming.
Yep.
And
Yep.
my friend was in too much trauma at the moment, but it did bring her out of
Right.
the severity as we spoke about it. And she said, "Who was that?" And I said, "He says two feathers." "Oh my gosh," she says, "Billy
Okay.
Two Feathers?" Yeah. So she knew him, and it was just uh, absolutely incredible that he was doing
Yeah.
something to bring peace for her. And I don't
For
even
her.
know
Yes.
if she realized that that's what it was, because it
Right.
did step her out of that shock.
Hmm. Sure. Sure. Boy, that's a beautiful story. That's really lovely. Thank you. I oh wow. Um, I I have a job at one of the colleges where I teach diversity. And
Mm-hmm.
so I want to bring this a little bit of this in. And the college that I teach for is located in New Hampshire,
Mm-hmm.
not any other. But there are people that go there from Florida, North Carolina, Texas. I mean, it doesn't matter where
Mm-hmm.
you live, you can go there.
Right.
But because New Hampshire is a very, it can be very progressive in the
Mm-hmm.
education field, they offer this diversity class, and
Sure.
so students need to take it before they can graduate, especially if they're going into fields where they're with a lot of people like HR and things like that. So one of the things that blew my mind was most recently, I believe DeSantis and there's a few others they have taken diversity away, training away. They believe that it gets people messed up and all this other stuff. But I get feedback from the students that what they're learning is so important. And I have students probably from 18 to 60. So they're not just kids, some
Mm-hmm.
of them. And there's a test that you take in one of the first one of the first times. And the test determines how biased you might be. Now, there is a difference between bias and prejudice, I
Of
believe.
course.
And yeah, but we can still be biased and prejudiced together for certain things. Well, they're taking it and they had no idea that they had some biases that they had. And when they realized that and they were explained to them from this test, it really was amazing the difference, the things that they would talk about from that. And I have people of color, I have minorities in there, I have a lot of LGBTQ folks. Also have people that have just gotten, or they just maybe become Americans, and
Okay.
they're learning all of these things that a lot of our Americans don't learn. And they're being stopped from learning because the governors and the folks in the states are saying, you don't need this. You don't need this. But of course you do. Of course you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
So,
too. Um, there's a lot of things that are misunderstood because there's these ideas that the small people, the marginalized, can be racist
right.
towards the large people group. And when you go into the study and the understanding of it, there's an inherent
Hmm.
element of the definition that precludes that. You cannot
Right.
be racist in the direction of the small against the majority, because there is a
Right.
power disparity. Where
Sure.
there's a power disparity, you could be a bigot.
Sure.
That could be the case,
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not racist.
Correct.
So I'm frequently letting people know, don't forget, there's a
Yeah.
power disparity.
There
So
is.
they
Hmm.
cannot. Some people cannot be racist. They can only be bigoted.
Yeah. That's very true. What I remember, what was it, 5 years ago or so, they said that by now we would have more Latinos in this country than white people. And I remember thinking, wow, that's amazing. I mean, that's one, because this is what our country is. It's constantly evolving. But what we're seeing now is demonization, not only of African Americans, but immigrants, number one, and of course Latinos. They are all have bad blood, and all this is being stated. And it's so much like 1933 Germany that it's frightening. It's absolutely frightening what's being said.
And a lot of people have no clue that our judicial system and our prison system is
Mhm.
corporatized, and
Right.
it is the new slavery. So there are laws that get made that are going to throw the book at an impoverished people, put
Mhm.
them in a place where they can't even have a living,
Right.
not allowing them to even have the dignity to get a decent wage, put
Yeah.
strikes against them, and they end up unable to go ahead and get out of that system, and they're getting more
Mhm.
money to keep them there. You know, they're
Yeah.
profiting
Yeah.
off of it as
Sure.
a new. It is not a chain gang. They take work projects to the prison,
Right.
so you
Right.
don't see
Yep.
it. I
You don't
think
see
that's
it,
a
but it's
big
yeah.
important part of the plan, because if
Yeah.
they were seeing it, then there could be an outcry. But if
Sure.
people get educated, they discover, oh, this is privatized,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it,
Yeah.
it's and we saw that after Reconstruction, after the Civil
Yeah.
War.
We did.
You had
Yeah.
laws that made it immediately able that you could have um, the black people that were then known as African Americans, I believe. Well,
Mhm.
no, they would have first been known as Negroes at that time.
Right. Right.
And they were
That's right.
given the opportunity to serve in public service and get elected positions. Soon,
Mhm.
they wiped that out, and they quickly
Yeah.
created laws that would not allow people to be in certain places. You couldn't, the way you walked the streets, and where you
Mhm.
looked, how you, like, if you would
Yeah.
look someone in the eye, it was
Uh-huh.
running a risk. And that's
Uh-huh.
why I think that, oh, 1955, Emmett Till's mother,
Oh,
what a
yes.
courageous woman.
I know. Yeah.
The
If you
fight,
anybody hasn't seen the movie, you need to watch the movie. It's
just
incredible.
to get a
Yeah.
start to understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to start. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Well, the other thing that would be I'd be remiss in not bringing up is how we've had internment camps here in this United
For the
States.
Japanese,
The Japanese during World War II.
right.
As a matter of fact, the what's his
George
name?
Takei,
The guy that was on Star Trek, George Takei. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
He
he
was in
speaks
it.
of
He
it.
was a child, but
Yes.
yeah, he is. Yeah. And others, they lost everything. They lost their homes, they lost their livelihoods. And now the other person who's wanting to be president again is saying that that's what he wants. He wants that here again with immigrant populations. And just the idea of it, how we don't get that. We're a diverse people. We've always been a diverse people. That was how the United States was envisioned by the forefathers. And we didn't have one religion, we didn't have one group of people. We had, so yeah, the whole thing just, yeah, I know, I don't get it
I,
either.
I, I mean, as long as we're, I don't want to stay on that very long, but I will
I
say,
understand.
in
Yeah.
regard to uh, that behavior and rhetoric, there was even
Hmm.
discussion about sending the people from Springfield, Ohio back to Haiti, but they
I
are
know.
actually
Yeah.
legal immigrants. They're
Yes.
all legal.
Yes. And some of them
Oh,
in Colorado as well. Yeah.
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 So,
Well, yeah. 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 So I pulled a couple cards about the Native Americans, and I got radiate true color. I love that. So she's bringing in all of her gifts and all of her awareness and radiating it into the population. Then I get protect your flow. And this is what we are here to do, is to protect the divine feminine flow. And then I get gather your tribe. And I love this because look at the differences in all of these animals. And what it's showing me is they can all coexist together in a world where they are a tribe. So can we. We can do the same thing. We just have to have the
500.
wherewithal.
There are around
Yeah.
500 different U.S. based native tribes.
Native
500.
pops. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
With
Wow.
different cultures.
Yes. Yep. Wow. It's beautiful. So I want to get back to something that you were supposed to bring in, which was BIPOC. You want to talk about BIPOC?
Sure. I don't know.
Okay.
I seem to find more people just not being familiar with the term. So it
I'm
seems
not.
like a good
Yeah.
time to go
Yeah.
ahead and bring it up.
Yep.
So BIPOC is a term from the first letters of the words Black, Indigenous, People of Color. And it is interesting when you look at it that it actually represents the colonization and the overpowering of indigenous people. Because, for instance, in Puerto Rico, you have people descended from the Taino, which was an Arawak of the pre-Columbian civilizations, and the Spanish from Spain. How did that happen? It was a bunch of men who took Taino women. It is not uncommon to hear safe spaces where they discuss being descendants of rape culture.
Okay.
That is
Wow.
what. That is how the beginnings. And this is what went on with our own nation in regard to propagating slaves.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm
just going to throw something out there. I'm wearing an extra little something. I'm wearing a little extra something. It is and it's made from Guatemala. I just thought I'd throw that out there. I chose this to be my sweater, my covered for today.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. That's wonderful. So I teach world literatures because I like to encompass everything, not just America. And one of the stories, which it comes across as a fictional story, but it's based on it, was the missionaries that were sent out. And you mentioned this in the very beginning when you were talking about the fact that you can go and claim this if you're doing it for God or for
right.
And
the doctrine of discovery.
Doctrine of discovery.
I'm going to write that in the chat.
Okay. So anyway, the British had the same thing because, Britain, France, whoever was out traveling to go to these places. And what they would do is they would say, we're going to liberate the savages, because it was the tribes that they wanted to liberate. And they didn't like it because these tribes weren't married. The men and women weren't married. And the children were being raised by the tribe, and they didn't like that. They felt people should have, there were lots and lots of reasons. So what did they do? They called them savages. They did that. And then they came into the tribe and they raped all the women.
Oh, how godly.
And they, yeah, right. And somebody, that was the other thing. One of the guys was a cleric, he was one of the ministers.
Sure.
And the women said, come with us. And they offered themselves to him. And this guy was so weak. He was saying things like, oh, my church, my God, but he's letting these women do this. And the whole idea of it is just so hilarious. I mean, not really. I don't want people to be raped, but calling somebody a savage
The irony
and then
is astounding.
right, the irony, yes, is
Yeah.
it's unbelievable, really. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And
I
it's
have been
happened all over
aware
the place.
for a very long
Mhm.
time of an asteroid of a priest, a
Uh-huh.
Spanish priest that sought to help liberate Mexico in its revolution, and it's called
Mhm.
Hidalgo. And just
Okay.
for giggles, I took a look and I found today was the first time I ever plugged it in because I just wasn't worried about
Okay.
it. But it
Yeah.
happens to be right conjoined my Mars in my natal chart, which shows the
Uh-huh.
drive of your focus, which
Sure.
is for me, it's third house and speaking out. So that's
Mhm.
what makes it's kind of funny because I remember in fifth grade reading a biography, and I cannot remember the name of which South American uh, revolutionary it was.
Uh-huh.
And I have read more South American history in the past 2 to 3 years, trying to remember it,
Mhm.
and it just doesn't hit one that makes
Mhm.
it. It's not a close enough match, and
Sure.
um, it ever since then I wanted to help lead a revolution.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God, I love that. There was a guy that in another story, and of course these stories are probably based on true things, but he was a priest or a minister. He was a white guy, and they were going to sacrifice him to their gods, like the Aztecs or whoever their
Sure.
gods were. And this guy he knew about eclipses of the sun, when they were coming, what they were
Oh
doing.
yes.
So he was astrologically brilliant. And so
Right.
he said,
Informed.
yes, informed. And so he said to them, I have to warn you that the end of the world is coming. But if you don't kill me, I will save you and bring the sun back. And he lived
I
because he knew that.
sure.
Yeah, it was just
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, yeah,
That,
it was
that was
fun.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, the
Yeah,
things. Eh, Knowing astrology saved his life.
correct. Correct. It did. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, and knowing about the eclipses of the sun and the moon and so on,
Yeah,
and that
that's how it
it
was.
was going to be.
That's
He
how it
said
was
it.
done.
They're mad at you, right? They're mad at you. It's going to be dark for a while, but I'll bring back the sun, and all be all right, And so then comes the eclipse, and then comes the sun, and so he's genius, and
Sure.
just so happened it was right at the time he was going to be executed or eaten or
Right.
whatever it was, but yeah. And it just reminds me of how valuable knowing about things like you're talking about are to
Sure.
us and our country, especially.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Um, so I wonder if it would be great if you could do a deep dive on um, Columbus discovering America, and of course there were others that had quote said they were going to
Sure.
discover America. It would be interesting, but I don't know if there's a date. I can't even. I know it was 1492, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Oh well, if October 12th, I guess.
Yeah. Probably.
Yeah. Although,
And,
yeah, that was
and
his
there
birthday, I think. Something. Yeah.
there is something that I might be able to find, but I'm sure they don't have a time, so it would be a little tricky.
Right.
But
Right.
it would
Yeah.
still be
Yeah.
something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
probably a
Yeah.
great place to see where the asteroids come into play
Sure.
because when you
Yeah.
don't have a time, but you go ahead and employ asteroids, that can then show something a little differently.
Okay.
You know, it,
It
yeah,
sounds like something that might be fun, and I just thought about it, like,
sure,
you know,
sure.
yeah, because I know we're dealing with astrological stuff with Pluto and the United
Oh
States and
yes,
and what's going on here. Do you know
yeah. I'll be
when's that gonna end? Do we have an end date on that?
with the Pluto.
Yeah, with Pluto and his influence on the
Oh,
current status of this country.
Well, this is something that is very liberating for good people who are doing their work on
Right.
themselves, because
Okay.
this
Okay.
began on the 20 in March of 23, and it's going to last for a little over
Mhm.
20 years. But
Oh, 20 years. Okay.
the thing that is intriguing about it is that when you look at the ingress chart, the chart for when it first happened, and we rectify that to Greenwich because
Right.
that's like Earth Central in a sense.
Correct.
When you look at it and you put everything together, you find a lot of Aries and Taurus placements. There's a lot of parts of people who are trying to deal with their identities and finding their
Uh-huh.
voices. So, those
Right.
people that are spiritually doing the work of getting their wounds dealt with are going to have it
Hmm.
easier. They're going to move forward. They will still have challenges, though. It looks to me like it
Right.
will create a divide between the good and the bad. And it's going to be a
Sure.
little more
As it has before. Right.
right,
Yeah.
but it's going to be a little
Yeah.
more drastic because we've been getting more and more spaces where we are called to grow and develop. And
Hmm.
when you ignore those, you sink deeper into difficulty.
Sure.
You fight against sound thinking and you find yourself making bad choices
Hmm.
and blaming other people.
Sure.
So the more that continues, the more we will see difficulty, and it will require sound social skills and getting on with people and giving people
Hmm.
space to heal. And
Hmm.
heart-centered living is certainly a great
Sure.
space
Sure.
to remain connected
Hmm.
with people because it's going to be tricky.
Sure. I have
I'm at
a question, and it's more,
mhm.
yeah, it's more of a, I don't expect you to come up with a concrete answer, but I'm wondering about the African American male vote and how there's some I'm hearing about the resistance to a woman
Oh,
being in charge. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I do know that there were people that were concerned amongst the black community,
Uh-huh.
even when Obama was
Oh,
taking the
that's true.
presidency,
That's true.
because
Mhm.
the feeling was even though enough people voted for him, it was quite likely that it was too soon, as far as they were concerned, for how the backlash would create such a push against the black community. And after his 8 years,
Mhm.
you did see a difficulty for the black community with
Yeah,
the police brutality.
that's
I
very
don't
true.
like.
Yeah, no, I hadn't really thought about it, but yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I feel
that's
it
true.
definitely increased then.
Yeah, of course, it didn't help that the person that followed him was calling for those things as well. So it was, and I do know that um, just because, for instance, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I need to vote for a woman. But
Right.
in this case, of course,
Sure.
it's not just I love her, so that's not a problem for me. But it's all about rights, women's
Sure.
rights, and all the
Hmm.
and women my age who started in the 70s and so on for getting birth control and getting all these other
Hmm.
wonderful things for ourselves. We we feel like we've been slapped down after all that hard work that we were doing and going back to the beginning, so to speak. And so, yeah, I think a lot of women my age want their granddaughters not to have any kind of problems when they're when
Sure.
they're out there in the world. So there is that.
I'm a
But
big fan of NPR, And a while
Mm-hmm.
back, maybe in the last 2 years, they shared some information regarding Pennsylvania. That's
Yep.
where I live,
Yep.
where our state legislature, after oh, the EPA, the EPA
Mm-hmm.
came along in the very early 70s. Some ambitious congressman here in Pennsylvania said, "This is great, but money's going to be allocated, things are going to happen, and then the next thing you know, they're going to start taking money away from the programs." We
Mm-hmm.
have such
Mm-hmm.
a, this was known as Penn's Woods. That's how you get the name Pennsylvania. So, in the nature of
Sure.
our respect for conservancy of the land, there was this
Uh-huh.
push. Let's go ahead and basically put it as an amendment in our own state constitution. And that's what they did. They
Mm-hmm.
actually protected the EPA. And I think
Okay.
instead of resting on the laurels of Roe v. Wade, they should have hammered it and
Oh,
had the next step be
absolutely.
our Congress run with that and make a bill and pass
Mm-hmm.
it into law. Because had
Mm-hmm.
that been done,
Yeah, we
this
wouldn't have this
never could have
conversation.
happened.
That's right. That's right. And the same thing with actually the women's equal rights that keeps getting shut down from the
Right.
GOP. And it's like women's rights. We're still fighting for women's rights. Come on. Or equal pay for equal work. That's
Yeah. How,
ridiculous.
how did you get equal rights, but you couldn't get equal pay?
That's correct. That's so correct. Yeah.
Am I missing
So
something?
Mary, I know. Mary says Madrid, October 13th, Reuters, 15th century Christopher Columbus was a Sephardic Jew from Western Europe. Spanish scientists said on Saturday after using DNA analysis to tackle
Hmm.
a century-old. Well, isn't that interesting? Thank you, Mary. Wow. That
Well,
that's
biologically,
wow.
but then there's the Inquisition.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Yeah. They still think of us as a product and brood mares. I know, Seascape.
That's right.
I really do believe that. I mean, that's what JD Vance thinks. Women of my age, we should just take care of our grandchildren. That's our job at this point.
Well, and you know, this was the same tactic used by Hitler
I
to
know.
go to go ahead
Yeah,
and to separate the men from the women.
correct.
When you go ahead and take women and keep them pregnant, they're so
Uh-huh.
wrapped up in taking care of their children, they don't have the time and energy to get out into the public arena to share their voice.
Right.
So then you
Right.
have half the population of voting age,
Hmm.
of thinking minds that could
Correct.
communicate sanity out of the playing field.
Hmm.
That's what this is
Hmm.
all about. It's
Yes,
control.
it is. It is control. Because I remember in 1980, I worked at a bank and I was sort of a person of all trades. I could do both sides. I could do loans. I could do everything. And assistant manager position came up, and the manager was always a woman that had no children. And the assistant manager's position came up, and they gave it to this guy who had no experience. And it was because he had a family to raise, like I didn't. But I
Right.
trained him. They wanted me
Hmm?
to train him how to do his job. And that's how I think of what I think about even now, that that's still going on. That's still going on.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. I know. I love that. And nobody did someone say the Spanish Inquisition?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to
That
go there with Columbus and the Sephardic Judaism.
I know. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. It's perfect. It is perfect. So I don't know how we want to close today. I guess I want to be a little more positive as I close this out. The fact that they have finally at least noticed that in 17 of our states that the indigenous people should have their own holiday, that they were the original Americans. They always will be the original Americans. And yet you hear all the time, why don't you go back to where you came from? And they're saying the same thing, and they're right. We aren't,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We did
Absolutely.
not discover anything that was already discovered.
Correct.
It
Correct.
was already here and
It was
already
already here.
inhabited.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
we talked about South America a little bit. If anybody's
Mhm.
interested, back in the 60s with such incredible civil rights music, South America had their representatives as well. And one of the most beautiful, robust female voices it was that I have ever heard was, I believe, Peruvian, and her name was
Uh-huh.
Mercedes Sosa. And you can find some of
Ooh.
her stuff done with Joan Baez. And
Okay.
there are certain women's voices that when you listen to them, it well, I remember I had the first time I ever met Melody, who discovered Super 7, who created the name Super 7 for the
Yep.
Amethyst Coccoxanite.
Hmm.
I met I met her in
You did. She's beautiful. Her books were
oh,
wonderful. Yeah. Yeah.
and her countenance is
Uh-huh.
delightful,
Angelic. Yeah. I
and
bet.
to listen to her laugh is to hear the joy of the goddess.
Oh,
That is my thoughts on it.
wow.
I don't
Okay.
remember what made her chuckle. I just remembered we were chatting, and when she laughed, I was blown away. But Mercedes
Yeah.
Sosa is absolutely a voice that no one will forget after they have heard her sing. You can feel the
Okay.
pathos that she will bring
Uh-huh.
to her music that is
Beautiful.
trying to help liberate.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and
That's
there's a lot of great Joan
wonderful.
Baez stuff too.
There is. There is. I want to
So,
also mention Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who
yes,
wrote Women Who
women who
Run with
run
Wolves.
with the wolves.
Yes, but she also has
Absolutely.
some audio tapes that are out that her voice is extraordinary. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, yeah.
As
Yeah.
long as we're going to throw, let's close out with a few
Okay.
more women that we can
Oh, there
talk
you go.
about.
There you
Uh,
go.
how about Jean Shinoda Bolen?
Yes. 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 Love it. Uh-huh.
I read Crossing to Avalon because I
Uh-huh.
believe it is a story about midlife. I believe it's about the Iranian opposition. It's about
Mm-hmm.
confronting
Mm-hmm.
yourself after decades of life, and you get to experience what have I been trying to escape out from under, where everybody thinks this is who I am, and I'm going to say, no, this
Mm-hmm.
is who I am. That's what's going on
That's
in
right.
midlife. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, that's
Uh,
beautiful. Yes, I love all those strong women, and their stories that can empower all of us. Um, Teelan says her newest guide is a Native American shaman from a past life. I wonder how we'd have been accepted. I was not Native American, probably 18. You know, they don't want us necessarily to be out there and putting up um, a mantle or whatever saying that, I am a Native American because I'm not a Native American.
right.
But at the same time, they want us to know how we can empower ourselves. And
Sure.
there's so
Sure.
much there for us. So it's beautiful. It is
And at this
beautiful.
time, we have been in this nation 400 years. So we are
Right.
getting to the space that there are
Uh-huh.
people that could look upon us and see us coming to an indigenous practice of our own. That
Right.
is beginning.
That's right. That's true. That's very true. Yes, I remember Sally Field recently just came on at 78 years old, telling her high school abortion story. Women's voices are crying to be heard. I think we're listening to them. Some of them indigenous, some of them white or black. We see that with a beautiful black poet who spoke at Biden's inauguration. I think everybody saw
Oh
her.
my golly.
Yeah.
That young woman,
Uh-huh.
it was
Yep.
incredible.
I
I
think her
can't
name is
remember her name.
Amanda. I think her first name is Amanda, but she's, she reminded me in some ways of a very young, um, oh, what's her name? That was friends with Oprah. Anyway, another African American woman who passed, older lady, and
Nikki
yeah,
Giovanni?
no, it wouldn't be. It was the one who wrote
Oh,
I Know.
Maya
Oh, Maya
Angelou.
Angelou. Yes,
Yes.
yes, Maya. Yeah, yeah, a young
Nikki
Maya. Yeah.
Giovanni was more connected with James Baldwin. And
Ah, who is another fascinating person to read. I
right.
love James Baldwin. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would definitely
There's,
suggest people fall to honor Indigenous People Day.
mhm,
Think
yeah,
about your curiosities and do a little bit of reading
yeah,
and see some of the accomplishments, see some of the contributions. Look at
yeah,
democracy because
yes.
democracy owes a little bit of debt of gratitude to the Iroquois
Mhm,
Nation's Confederate Nation.
mhm. Yep, we do, we do.
But
Um,
that's
and and
kept quiet.
and I'm also thinking today with all these powerful women of Shirley Chisholm and how she broke into her position and how difficult it was at the time for her to even
Right.
be able to do that. So
Is that the
yeah,
one that still may actually have a Netflix movie you can still catch currently?
might be because I remember watching it. So yeah, very true. And yes, Seattle is named for the chief of the Duwamish tribe. Um, it's South, isn't it? And how you pronounce it is South, Chief South, I believe it is. That's how Seattle, because the Duwamish tribe. Wow.
That's another
Well,
just that's something else I wanted to just touch on. When I say
yeah,
they took their culture, they cut their hair,
yes,
and that was their connection to the earth.
correct.
It is believed that that's what helps us connect with our senses, our extrasensory perception.
Hmm.
Since my sister passed, I have not cut my hair once.
Wow.
Uh,
Okay.
I, I mean, I had one knee jerk reaction for the funeral, and then after that, that was it
Uh huh. Uh huh.
because I was in the immediate bereavement. And
Yeah.
I just feel it's so important to honor those things.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
the Taino of uh, Puerto Rico and Cuba, they do keep their hair longer. That is
Do they?
normal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. If you hadn't realized, Rick, you weren't born there, were you? You weren't
No,
born in Puerto Rico,
no.
but no, but your family originated from Puerto
On
Rico.
my mother's
Yes.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On your mother's side. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mother
Yeah.
was born in San Juan, and my
Uh-huh.
mother and her mother lived in Rio Piedras. And
Uh-huh.
um,
Wow.
we, I have many parts of my soul that cannot see these atrocities without feeling that the blood
Feeling.
that runs through
Yes,
my veins
I
is
get
the
it.
same blood that runs through the veins of marginalized people everywhere.
Right. Yep. Yep.
And that's what it is to be BIPOC, because
Uh-huh.
we are oftentimes passing for white. It is what
Uh-huh.
beats in our heart that we are always remembering so much of. And if you get busy
Mhm.
with work and your professionalism, you don't talk about yourself and your personal life
That's
very
true. Yeah,
frequently.
that's true.
And
Mm-hmm.
it was
Yeah.
very easy to just slip in. The whole way through all of my education, I was always identified as Hispanic. And
Mm-hmm.
it was, it's very awkward and disquieting. And I made a very large push within my own home congregation and with the denomination itself, trying to bring equity and diversity to the delivery of ministry so that we can have a more authentic
Yeah.
representation of our beliefs.
Uh-huh.
And we made major changes to uh, our bylaws to make
Sure.
that happen.
To make it happen. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for being with Reverend Rick and I, especially on this beautiful Indigenous Peoples Day. And we'll be back again another time. Thank you, Rick. You're awesome. I
Thank you
love being
so
with you.
much.
And
Thank you
yeah,
to the people who were
absolutely.
giving some great feedback too. I
Yes,
really
yes. We
appreciate
love
that.
that. Yeah, we both do. Thank you so much. You guys make it a beautiful day. All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take
Bye-bye.
care, all. Bye bye.